U.S. is heading toward economic collapse. Yes, I know this is a little bit more of an interesting hello for all of you guys, but now I'm a bit more chipper and I'm going to talk about economics because that's one of the topics that I pretty much grew up with. So let's really get down to what I'm saying. Why am I saying that the economy is about to go on collapse? Or at least is looking at collapse? Well, a helpful little video by Asmongold pointed out that younger generations are simply not as wealthy as their parents or their grandparents. More importantly, as young people's ability to actually earn income or hell, even buy assets such as a home, car. Actually, no, homes and cars aren't really assets per se, but still a good measure of someone's ability to actually have wealth. As companies continue to grow their own profits, as more and more people are having harder and harder time being able to just afford anything, eventually something has to give. And unfortunately for pretty much every single market, because they're all guilty of this, it's probably going to be all of them falling apart. The housing market, the car market, every single last one. And of course, these same baby boomers that have been trying to secure their own wealth will no doubt sit there and blame the millennial generation. Never mind that through politics and via different laws and regulations that they've put into place, they themselves have protected their own value, their own wealth, and protected their own ability to make income, or at least some of them, I should say. As it's also kind of ironic that the boomers who didn't have any assets or money or wealth are also looking at economic collapse. Because a good number of our good, friendly grandma and grandpas have kind of failed to actually prepare for retirement. In fact, it looks like a good number of the older generation is complaining that they won't be able to survive on $1,700 a month. Something that's kind of hilarious, considering that it seems like they were more than happy to leave their younger kids to have to live on that same amount. It's kind of ironic that the same old people that probably have sat there and told us repeatedly, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, while ignoring the fact that they sold the straps, the boot, and the sock that went with it about 30 years ago, are now finally starting to realize, holy shit, things are kind of expensive. And it's nearly impossible for someone to live on $30,000 a year. 30 years ago, $30,000 a year would have gotten you a house, 2 cars. You would have been able to take care of your kids. You used to be able to work for 40 hours a week and still be able to take care of, well, pretty much everything. Now you have to work anywhere about 50 to 70 hours a week, which ends up barely making you enough just to survive. Kind of ironic that since 100 years ago, under Henry Ford and hell, a lot of different other industrial entrepreneurs of the Victorian era kind of figured out that, paying people a little money and then not actually making sure that they can survive doesn't do too good. Turns out that if you want to actually make money, you kind of need to broaden your customer base by making things cheaper and more widely available. But that hasn't been the case. Corporations have been steadily raising prices on every single product imaginable for any excuse they can throw at you. And the funniest thing is, they've kept you financially illiterate because they don't want you to realize just how badly they're effing you over. These people will get price cost increases about 10 cents and then charge you an additional $8 on what they're already charging. Case in point was the $20 an hour mandated wage for employees in fast food in California. McDonald's operators decided that they either replace their employees with machines, which actually from a business perspective is kind of a bad idea. If your customers are already having a hard time buying your product and you're hiking up the prices and firing people, you're shooting yourself twice in the foot. You already have a problem with people buying your stuff, and hiking up the price means that people are going to buy less of it because people's ability to purchase, their purchasing power hasn't gone up. So now they're going to continue to buy less of what they already weren't buying enough of and to start with. And by firing people, you've reduced the number of people that are actually earning money, which double entendres your already exacerbated problem. You've made it to where now you have less people making money. The people who were making money and buying the product now can buy less of it because they're going to have to choose between buying your burger and, well, buying food that's actually relevant. You're kind of screwed. And you're going to see this happening over and over again. The video game market, for example, another luxury market, is having similar issues. If you really want to see where economies are going, pay attention to the luxury goods. When luxury goods start getting overpriced and people start buying less and less of it, that should tell you that we're in trouble. Video games are now $70 a pop, and that's whether it's physical or digital copies. And the funny thing is really by doing this, they've actually cost themselves even more money. For example, let's take a look at the digital market for video games. It's very easy to think that one would actually be able to sell a digital game at half the price and still make more than enough profit. Hell, I would say you should do that. After all, unlike a physical copy, you don't have nearly the costs. Supply is infinite. You're selling an infinite number of copies of the same file on a server. And unlike a physical copy, you don't have to pay for shelf space in a store. You don't have to pay for warehouses. You don't have to pay for the discs and the printing to actually put the tags on the discs. Everything is pretty much just based on whatever files you have on hand. Not only that, but if they're really trying to push us toward the digital market, which seems to be their goal here, charging half the price for a digital video game is probably the best idea you could do. People would be more willing to buy games at half the price at $30 to $40 compared to $70 because now it's more readily available for them. In a world where economically people are struggling to survive, they're going to have a lot more choices in terms of whether they're going to actually spend $70 on a game or they're going to spend $30 on an independent game that's, cheaper. Maybe it's just me. I kind of grew up in the good old age of the idea that, hey, you want to really make money? You make things cheaper for your customers, you make them more readily available, and you figure out ways to keep that product in a good quality. Seems like the opposite of every single major corporation to date, it looks like. Major corporations' solution to pretty much everything has been thus far to raise the prices and then get mad when when people don't buy the product. And yet somehow they're still able to have record profits. That one, I wonder where the math is coming from, but I'll digress there. At the end of the day, though, this is all going to collapse. As more and more boomers are put on set income, in which most of them are just not going to have the money that they used to. You're going to see a large number of baby boomers having to sell off assets, having to get rid of homes and buildings that they owned for years, purely because they just simply can't afford them. And as the market becomes oversaturated, the housing market itself will most likely collapse very quickly. As supply will become inevitably oversaturated, while demand will become an all-time low. And unfortunately for banks like BlackRock, even they only have so much money. And again, with the older generation going back into a set income closer to their young kids in their 30s and 20s, making barely $30,000 a year, things are going to get real interesting. Suddenly, car markets are going to plummet down as vehicle prices have to go down to meet the demands and the actual purchasing power of the customer. You're going to see markets all across the board collapsing. Because again, the only thing really keeping them going has been the baby boomers. And the boomers who have outnumbered us, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and even the Gen Xs combined by 3 times over, once they start being not an economic force, a lot of these companies are going to be in utter shock, as suddenly all their profits start going down to almost nothing, leaving them with little more choice than to realize the following details. By impoverishing the younger generation to protect themselves, they've only but set up a ticking time bomb. One that will go off and have absolute devastating effect. Without a viable large customer base to actually be able to pay and buy for your products, your company is all but doomed. People have already been having to see this effect a little bit, as people are having to choose between what movies we decide to watch, even in theaters, as going to the movie theater is considered expensive, another luxury item that I mentioned before. Like I said, if you really want to see what's going on economically, take a look at how much people are really spending on luxuries, and you'll have a good idea whether you're doing really well. People tend to spend a lot on luxury items when things are economically good. When their families are well taken care of, they're able to buy food and take care of their kids. When housing isn't a concern. When putting gas in the car, making car payments isn't that big of a deal. Effectively, when you're talking about luxury items, it's a good measure of how much spare cash is actually available in the market. And unfortunately, as more and more prices keep going higher and higher, especially in living costs, the average one-bedroom apartment in the United States right now costs anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. The average studio apartment is costing anywhere from $1,300 to $1,500. It's not exactly cheap, to say the least. I'm fortunate enough where my apartment's only $750 right now, and even worse is the reality, unfortunately, that a lot of these prices aren't even being based on cost. Apartment prices today are actually being based on a company out in the Midwest. I forget their name. But basically what these people do is they run an algorithm which then tells property owners what the max they can charge per property. The then property owners / landlords charge the maximum amount they can before the market will burst. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest and tell you that's probably one of the dumbest things you can do, because trying to push the market to its absolute brink is a really good way of ending up really broke. You want to charge enough that people can actually survive. You want people to have spare money, and then you also want to charge a reasonable amount based on your cost. This not only protects you, but it also keeps you less in good money. It's actually a lot better for a property owner or a landlord to have something along the lines of 5 people all renting an individual apartment rather than 5 people having to rent a single 1-bedroom apartment because, well, they can't afford anything else. One, there's additional cost to that because there's always the concern the more people you put into an apartment, the more likely that they're going to damage the apartment, that they'll do some kind of property damage or they'll throw whatever party, what have you, causing a lot of destruction to that property. Plus, every single apartment that's not occupied, every building that's not occupied is coming out of your pocket. So if you have a 20 apartment complex, you're spending about $5,000 a month in costs on the complex, and you divide it up, your really cost is about $250 a month per apartment. You could reasonably rent those apartments at $750 a month and still be making more than a decent profit. Yeah, I'm the kind of person that knows how to crunch numbers. It's kind of my thing. To tell you straightforward, it's just like I did recently a math problem talking about what it would cost for a McDonald's cheeseburger using similar or at least comparable items and ingredients available at your local Walmart. When it's broken down, you're talking about $1.37 for a cheeseburger meal. The same thing that they want to charge you $10 to $11 for costs them $1.37 at $20 an hour. Let that sink in. Basically, as this keeps going where prices aren't being based in genuine cost versus on costs rather than what they can think they can get away with, it's going to continue to get ugly. As customers no longer have the money to be able to purchase it. Which inevitably means that you're going to see a lot of McDonald's closing out. A lot of franchise owners are going to lose a lot of money. A lot of people involved were going to lose even more. It's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be ugly. Great. I'm not going to sit here and try and promise you that some awesome miracle cure. I'm sorry, but there's not really much I can think of that's going to fix this other than corporations getting their heads out their own backside and realizing, maybe we need to start charging based on what it actually costs us to bring these things to the public, not what we think we could make based on BS statistics. But anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and comment below, and I'll see you next time.